I'm sorry, I was just doing my best NorCal cycling impression. The video of the sprint finish is at 13 minutes, 45 seconds, if you want to jump straight there. It was a really incredible finish this week. I was nowhere close. That was the most exciting finish that I wasn't a part of at last. I finished off the back this week after going in a breakaway way too early, which we'll see in just a few laps, and after a bit of fast forwarding. I'm sure if you'd like to watch this race without commentary, the link to that video is in the description alongside the Strava from this race and the bike reg if you're catching this early enough, late May, early June 2022. This is week 3 of the Columbus Criterium Series out in Hilliard at the Fairgrounds. We'll do 20 laps of this, which we're almost done with the first lap right here. A short course and a lot of fun. Great organization. I've been having a lot of fun. And I'm going to try to make it to all of them this time around. We'll see. If you're watching this with much anticipation, I am going to spoil it right here because we don't even get to see the end of the race from my perspective. We'll be doing a lot of fast forwarding as I roll in solo off the back. But we do have a little bit of footage from the final sprint that we'll share again towards the end of the video. Incredible performance from Will Action Jackson in his first crit. Incredible. And he finishes first in a group of 13 in the sprint finish, and what a hell of a sprint finish it was. Congrats again to Will. That was so cool. And to make it even cooler, he had a bunch of friends at this race, which is just so awesome to see. I mean, that he invited his friends out, and there were like 5 or 6 of them that showed up. I was setting up in this parking lot to our right. I was like putting my socks on, and some guy rolled up and was like, "Is this where the bike race is? You guys go all the way around this building?" And I'm like, "Yeah, 20 times." He was like, "Wow." And then he saw Will, and he's like, "There's Will," and he honked his horn. I thought it was so cool that he brought a bunch of spectators off to the right here and won in his first race for him. That's so sick. Anyway, I have a feeling we'll see him moving up in category in the not-too-distant future. Anyway, enough about the amazing race that Will had. Here we are on lap 3 of, you'll notice, 21. I did an extra lap by accident. Whoops. We'll get there towards the end of the video. If you want an insight into how I'm feeling right now, we're, again, 3.5 laps in. This is where we see most of the headwind. I'm just trying to duck in on a wheel for the most part, and I'm feeling pretty good. Honestly, I had a long day at work. I don't want to make excuses as to why I got dropped. It was definitely a poor tactical choice, but otherwise, I had enough water in me. I had a good lunch. Everything was adding up to a successful afternoon. And sitting in on these wheels, I was feeling pretty good about that too. We had a nice, again, field of 13, and for the most part, felt very comfortable within the group for the first time. I think it was. There's a couple of oh whoa moments which will come across as I glance over my shoulder or something and adjust my line in a way that's not great. Again, something that I can work on for sure is the bike handling within a pack, which I guess is what we're here to work on at a training crit. One of many things. We'll go off-roading for a little bit, which is what I'd like to call the beginning of the end. But as for now, this is what I at least I've come to expect in just a few weeks of riding this course, is that at least the first few laps are going to be a little bit tamer than usual. So we'll fast forward here a bit, just a lap or a half of a lap or so until we get to our first attack. And, it just starts to wake us up a little bit.
Right.
So I learned that I've got this kind of weird mentality about calling stuff out like that, where I do it a lot of times when I don't need to do it, and sometimes I'll call it out and just hope that other people do all the work. And even in times I forget that I'm going to have to do a little bit of work, even if the people in front of me are doing it. But for some reason, as I call something out, I just said right once, and then somebody else said right, thrice. That's when I started to panic and stand up and say, "Oh God, I gotta get there right now." If somebody else is calling it out, it must be real and significant. And yeah, it wasn't. I just kind of spiked up in power, I'm sure, for no reason. I'm gonna invest in a power meter at some point. If anyone's got recommendations for that on a budget, do let me know. But half a lap later, and we're just right here back into a calm cruising attitude, at least for a little while longer, as we continue to fast forward here until the next exciting thing. And it's the thing that unravels my race completely. The title of the video, my first breakaway, happens in a little over a lap's time when somebody attacks and somebody else follows. And I said, I don't want to get caught outside of this breakaway. It's funny, on Strava, a lot of people said, I was just waiting for the right moment to go, waiting for the right break to join. And I didn't do that. I just wanted to be a part of something. Again, after watching Chris win last week in a solo break and not wanting that to happen to me again. I want to win one of these things. So I just went with the first group that I could. And it was as John says, a bold choice. And at this point in the race, I'm sitting in on a wheel and I'm feeling good. I'm hoping that nobody attacks for a handful of laps. But here we go. We hit the downwind, and a lot of stuff happens at once, starting with the first guy to go.
Left.
It gets called out. I don't know if I would have had the guts to chase him if the rider in front of me didn't already start chasing him. We round the corner. I'm sitting in third, glancing over my shoulder, seeing who else is with me, and I realize that I'm going to have to do a little bit of the work to bridge, so I come around him on his right, and this is crazy, but we go off-roading. And John was on my wheel, and he said he was, quote, admiring the gravel skills as I full-scented. My thought was I didn't want to get bumped into the gravel. I wanted to at least have full control over it, even if it meant like surging up 100 watts to make sure that everything was safe. I felt like that was a worthwhile thing to do. This is crazier what I say to this guy. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. We can do it. Like, just talking completely out of my rear end there. At 201 beats per minute. Yeah, we can do it. We can hold off the guys that really want to win for 11 more laps. That sounds reasonable. It's also kind of funny to watch here. All the work that I think I'm doing as I downshift there, heading into the wind on a breakaway. Supposed to go faster than the guys behind you, for example. As we dip down 21, 20, 19 miles an hour around the corner. I'm just hoping that maybe if we pedal through the corners, it'll be like helpful, but we're not that much more agile than the pack. He comes around me here and says this. I don't know if you could hear it there, but it was just like, let's just try and stay off the front. And I was like, yeah, that's the plan. And I sat behind his wheel. Admittedly, we have the service of the tailwind here, but it is so funny to see the number go up so dramatically when he's in front, 26 miles an hour average, and then we whip back around and oh gosh, we are going so much slower whenever I'm doing the pulling here. Which is kind of funny in itself. I say that as if I got another chance to pull, but here comes the counter. And I call it out for some reason. As if it's not just us getting captured. It's not like they're, taking advantage. They're already in their own attack. I have nothing to do with this. I have no reason to call it out for that guy. But, I mean, he did jump up on his feet and stay attached. I try in vain to continue, but as I kind of see the big stretch that's happened, I'm just crossing my fingers that they slow down because I know that I'm not going to be able to go much faster. We sit in on the tailwind, and I think this might be my last chance to close this gap. I have learned already that it's sometimes easier to just stand up and do the 15-second effort than it is to finish the race on your own and just try not to get lapped for what will wind up being 9 more laps. Actually, 10 more laps because I didn't know when the race was over. We'll get to that soon. But starting to get a little bit worried here, seeing the group in front of me and also kind of pushing 200, my max beats per minute, more like 205. There goes Joel there. He's got a rear camera. I'm excited to see that. And if he winds up posting the footage from the race, I will link it in the description. I will also share this video from, I believe his name is Andres, who was also in the race. He shared that part of his. He also fell off the back, so it's it's 2 angles from the race where we don't finish with the main group, which is such a shame because the end of the race is so cool. I wish I would have gotten to see it, even if it was just from a few wheels back. I'm so grateful that somebody captured some video, which again, we'll get to at like 13:45. But as for now, we'll fast forward through this segment of the race. If going early in that breakaway that I didn't think about at all was the moment that it all started to unravel, these are the handful of laps where it really was cemented that I would not finish with the pack. And it's so frustrating to watch this back because I knew that this was the wrong thing to do. My very first crit was, just a handful of weeks ago up at races at the lake. And admittedly, I was on pretty bad form and I wasn't that confident with jumping into the whole group of riders. I was pretty intimidated at, taking a decade off of the sport and then trying to jump right into the back of the pack at a race pace. But I sat on the back wheel. We got rubber banded, which you can even see in this fast of the video, how we, separate a little bit and then come all back together. And the guy in the very end gets the worst of that. And I knew this to be the case, and I still did it. So that's why it's, again, frustrating to watch back. Something that I should consider going into other races is that even as it plays out, in my head, I'm like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. We're still on the back wheel. We're still on a wheel. We didn't get dropped. I'm trying to look at it optimistically as we race. But as I watch it now and I know the ending, which should have been easy to predict, it's a little more upsetting to me to watch it play out. This part still scares me for some reason. We're looking normal. We're, 2 abreast, 3 abreast, passing a lap rider, and then all of a sudden, single file, all of us. And I was like, oh no, I'm the last one on this. Going into the corner, if they accelerate on the front at all, I am screwed. And look what happens, they did. If I couldn't handle the rubber banding before this, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to handle it after. And it's when we hit this tailwind that the guys in front really start to go. And the three of us, in just a matter of a few seconds, are already in a completely different bike race. And it's crazy how fast it can happen. Going over that bump at almost 30, by the way, is kind of terrifying. I started fishtailing this time for some reason, and I'm going to have to look into why that happens. If anybody has a clue, please do let me know. Maybe just taking it too aggressively, or maybe the wrong tire pressure this time or something, but twice I was going over it too fast or maybe at too sharp of an angle and just slid out for a little bit. Freaked me out, more than going on the dirt earlier in the race. Anyway, at this point, I'm just grasping at straws, trying to stay attached to this group of 3. We'll hit another fast-forward segment in just a minute and start to bring this commentary to a close. Again, if you want to watch the whole thing, if you just want to put it on in the background and see how it plays out in real time, if you're looking for yourself and you think you're caught up in a fast-forward section, again, the link to that video is in the description. Shouts out to Jess once again. You'll see her on the left taking amazing photos. I think I did worse by myself, trying to keep my mouth closed, trying to look cool for the picture at this point, which probably just did me in a little further. I knew I wasn't going to win. So might as well get a cool picture, like when Joel flies by on the right and I wave goodbye on the... You see, I take my hands off the bars there, just barely, so that I can get into his rear GoPro footage. Joel, if you're watching this, I'd love to see it, if you find that frame on lap 17. Not the only time I take my hands off the bars. I'll fast forward through the end of the race here in just a second. But my girlfriend's up here on the right watching the race, and to go from 2nd to 9th, I take my hands off and say what are you gonna do? That sort of thing, and at least got to share a laugh there. So here we go. I'll just fast forward through a couple more laps. I do want to point out something that did confuse me, though. I guess I just need to learn how to read a lap counter, because it just said 3 there. And as we come up, it'll say 2. And in 1 lap's time, you might guess that it would say 1, and it did. But I didn't get a bell or anything, and I was thinking, wait a minute, is this my last lap, or am I miscounting? Do we stare down 0 as our last lap? I certainly haven't counted in my head up to 20. With the tunnel vision that I've got going on. No, I found out that they did ring the bell for everybody that was in the main group. I was just so far off the back that they didn't ring the bell just for me. And fair enough, that's totally fine. But it definitely got in my head as I came around the corner on this, which was my last lap. And this guy sprints, but I couldn't remember if I had lapped him or not or what. But it doesn't change the fact I looked up and I saw 1. That's another 1. So I just kept going. Just the most awkward way that I could have finished this race by... not having any clue where I was, looking behind me, is anybody going to catch me? I know this isn't timed, and the whole time being done with the race, still kind of putting down at least a little bit of an effort here into the wind for at least 1 more lap. And then coming up onto the finish line here, this is when I see a bunch of riders in front of me soft pedaling, and I'm not trying to sprint past them if the race is still going on. Sprint for 8th, and then I saw Jess taking a photo off to the left, and I was like, oh, do I do something sarcastic? Do I do something cool like Joel did last week? And I took 1 hand off the bars, and I'm looking forward to seeing Jess's photos, but not that one. You don't have to upload that one, Jess. It's fine. Anyway, I promised some footage of the sprint finish. Let's go ahead and watch all that we've got.
Final lap! Final lap! This is it! This is it!
Will! Will got it! Oh, man.
I mean, tell me that's not one of the coolest things you've ever seen. Congrats again to Will. 2 more bits of bonus content here. The rider chatter after the race. I hope it's okay that I captured a little bit of that. And I also hope it's okay that I captured this review of the final sprint from my girlfriend, who's only ever seen 1 cycling race before this. And it was last week's beginner crit.
At the very last second, this guy worked out in front of the guy who won last week. And I guess it was his first race.
Wow.
He just
Wait.
He was behind him and he zoomed in front of him.
That's really cool.
Well,
Yeah. That's awesome.
Thank
Congrats.
you.
That's so cool.
I'm tired now. Pretty good bit. I was using any and everybody. He took off.
I was like, I gotta
I was
go.
like, I can't chase him this early.
Well, that was the point, is to make somebody chase me,
Yeah.
and then he was going to come around.
Yeah, I wasn't chasing him.
I didn't catch
I
on.
didn't click that bait. Four guys I was watching. You and Joel. I can hold Joel's wheel. I'm good.
I was gone. You were a little bit early.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit early. Kyle's a little bit short.
Try to tire us out. Thanks, man.
Anyway, even if I was almost dead last, it was still one of the coolest things that I've ever been a part of on a bike, just because of that finish. How awesome is that? I'll be back in a couple of weeks. I think I'm taking next Wednesday off, but a couple more videos still to come from this series. Wish me luck. I'm going on a Super Century in a couple of days. We'll see if I can do 120 miles on Sunday and then race this crit on Wednesday. Thanks for watching.